Hey guys, Paul here. So, have you ever heard of the concept of intermittent reinforcement? It's basically a tactic that abusers use to control and manipulate their victims. So, the way that it works is basically that the abuser creates a sort of cycle of abuse and kindness. And because there's no way for the victim to predict when the abuser will be nice or abusive, it sort of keeps them on edge and creates this sense of constant hope that the abuser will maybe be nice again and that the good times will one day return. Not that that has anything to do with what we're going to be talking about today. The Yu-Gi-Oh ban list just got updated. Konami finally gave us a new list. It goes into effect on the 15th if you're in the United States, or the 22nd if you're anywhere else. And there's so much to talk about. This is honestly a huge one. So we're going to pull it up, go through it, and just sort of, yeah, gather our thoughts. I want to hear what everybody thinks about this. So, got it pulled up over here on Master Duel Meta. We can, sort of hover over cards and see what they do. So, spoiler: these are the cards. This is what it was hit. We'll take it one by one and then conclude. So, first of all, there's Link Karibo. Um, this is a card that a lot of people were talking about as a potential hit for Snake Eyes. It's their go-to Link One monster, which is good for them because most of their main monsters, like Snake Eye Ash and Oak and all that stuff, they're all level one. And the big benefit that Link Rebo added for the deck was that in latter turns, you can actually quick effect tribute a Link 1 monster or a level 1 monster and summon Link Rebo from your graveyard, and this could be really good for dodging effects like Infinite Impermanence, Effect Veiler, other types of removal. By distributing your level 1 monster, its effect could still resolve, you get back Link Rebo, in addition to also being a pretty solid sort of defense for the deck that made it hard to just swing over their monsters in battle because you got to deal with Link Rebo. So, because everybody sort of predicted that Konami was definitely not going to hit Snake Eyes directly, this is one of those next best thing options. And frankly, I do not mind it. It sort of sucks to see a card like Link Rebo go because let's face it, this is not a broken card on its own merits. It's just that Snake Eyes did Snake Eye things with it, and Konami still got to sell those Snake Eye cards. So, yeah, this is what kind of got hit in its place. In fact, as a bit of a spoiler, there aren't any direct hits to Snake Eyes on this list, so we'll be talking about that here in a bit. The next two cards are the absolute bombshells of this ban list: Baron de Fleur and Borlode Savage Dragon. I have to say, I really am surprised to see that these cards got hit, but I'm not unhappy to see these hits. I have said for a long time now that generic extra deck monsters that just have really powerful negation, kind of omni negate abilities, are not really great for the game. They make for good boss monsters, but they oftentimes overshadow the native boss monsters in most decks because why make like your deck's level 10 synchro when you can just make Barone, or why make your deck's level 8 synchro when you can just make Borlode Savage Dragon? It kind of makes a lot of combo decks and pile decks ultimately run together because they're all kind of headed to the same inboard. And this actually makes me wonder if a card like Apollosa is maybe even like kind of on the chopping block as well because it is a similar card to these. So yeah, didn't expect to actually see Konami hit these. The fact that they did though means that they've definitely been listening and paying attention to the sorts of things that have been plaguing modern Yu-Gi-Oh for a while now. That said though, I do feel like it's maybe a little unfortunate because like there are a lot of people who wanted to get their hands on Baron de Fleur, and now they finally got it thanks to stuff like Rarity Collection now that's like affordable and accessible. And now the card is hit, so that sort of sucks. And also, I guess if you're like a sort of Rocket or just Dragon Link player, then the hit to Borlode Savage Dragon is not too pretty either. However, I think for the ultimate health of the game, these are probably pretty good hits. And I'm interested in seeing how both Snake Eye and also just other combo decks managed to adapt and reroute their plans. Because these were two really powerful cards. The Snake Eye strategy, Jet Synchron plus Diabellstar makes things like Borlode Savage Dragon, and then also you can use a Formula Synchron, sometimes alongside Borlode Savage Dragon, to then make Baron de Fleur. So these were definitely two cards that kind of kept up the power level of Snake Eye, and so since they won't have access to this, maybe that means it's sort of an indirect nerf, and I think that it is. Now, the last card is Summon Limit. I was sort of surprised to see this. The fact that it's banned is just a bit of a shock to me. This is one of those floodgate cards that sort of got off the hook when they did the big mass exodus of floodgates back in December. So I'm not too surprised to see it. It's sort of funny and ironic that like modern Yu-Gi-Oh is so fast that a card that says, players can only summon twice has to be banned, but we all know why it is. Floodgates are not pleasant to play against, and oftentimes they're abused by the decks that summon a lot of cards. They summon lots of stuff, then they set summon limit and they use it against you, and that's not really very fun. So I'm not going to complain too much about this thing being gone because floodgates just aren't the most exciting thing. And if Konami is going to be banning things like this, then I think that it's fair that this kind of also gets banned. So it's like stun strategies are hit kind of equally to combo and like I guess aggro strategies. Maybe that you could explain it that way. So yeah, these are the 4 banned cards. Next, let's talk about the limited cards. So Arch Nemesis Protoss is back at 1. It was banned for a little bit. This is a really strong card in the Sword Soul deck, and it kind of feels like a fair trade. They lose access to Baron de Flor, which is one of their go-to synchros, and they get Arch Nemesis Protoss back. This card is a little obnoxious and sort of worries me because it's one of those cards that just says, okay, Walking Floodgate, you can't, summon a certain attribute during the next turn. My thought process with this is that maybe Konami intends for you to use this to deal with fire decks. So maybe, if your deck kind of runs lots of different attributes, you could use Arch Nemesis Protoss, call fire. The fire deck would have a tough time. If you destroyed something like, say, Flamberg with this, it also wouldn't be able to summon back the 2 fire monsters. So there's something there. I mean, I sometimes worry that maybe they'll even be able to use this card, but hopefully that's not the case. We will see. Still though, I don't mind this coming back, at least for now, and I think that if nothing else, Sword Soul maybe deserve it. Okay, next is Title. This card being back to 1 does not surprise me. These Dragon Rulers are finally making their way off of that ban list, and I couldn't be happier. These cards are like all in Master Duel and stuff. None of them really get played. No, they don't seem to make an impact. They're just too dated. They just aren't strong enough. And they have like the hard ones per turn where you can literally only use like one of their effects. I don't think that this sort of stuff will matter. Title is no exception to that. I know people are like, oh my god, but it's like, a foolish burial, and that's crazy. But I'm gonna be honest. I mean, like, what deck is really gonna be like making huge use of Title in like an abusive way? I don't think very many. So I'm glad to see this. I hope to see Dragon Roars eventually make their way to 3. If I'm being completely honest, I just don't think that it'll make much of a dent. Okay, another really exciting one is Thunder Dragon Colossus. And so this is actually back at 1. So not at 3, so it's nothing too crazy, but this does like allow the Thunder Dragon deck to return as something actually playable because they have one of their key bosses back. Of course, there's also the concern though about Thunder Dragon Colossus that a lot of different decks will probably be able to use this card. There's Nemesis, what is it? Corridor, Flag, one of them. One of the green Nemesis monster allows many different decks to make use of Thunder Dragon Colossus because it basically is a thunder monster that has an effect that activates in hand, and then once you've used its effect, you can, summon Thunder Dragon Colossus pretty easily. Um I so I'll be completely honest. I don't actually mind this card being back. Since there's only one of it, it means they can't do the thing that, like, if you played in 2019, you'll remember summoning the double Thunder Dragon Colossus onto the field, and that way, like, Infinite Impermanence or other cards like that, Forbidden Chalice, couldn't really deal with Colossus because, like, you still had a second one that had an effect. So I sort of worry, like, will a combo pile weird thing that uses Thunder, like a Prank Kid deck or whatever, just add a Colossus onto its board and be more obnoxious? Yeah, probably so. But I think still there's a lot of yearning for kind of that 2019 toss format life to be back. And this was one of the last cards that got banned from that coming back. I think the only thing that's really left now is Electromite itself, which we'll see what Konami does there. But I don't mind this hit. I'm interested in it. I'm a little like cautiously optimistic, I suppose. Next is Magispector Unicorn Kieran. This stayed banned for a very long time, and I never thought that they would. Well, I thought they'd eventually bring it back because I don't think it's all that obnoxious of a card. Don't get me wrong, this card can be really good. Like, quick effect bounces are nice. And I think that it is a way to make the new Magispector support seem a little bit more enticing. That just recently came out in, what was it, Phantom Nightmare. And no one really plays the deck. So this is one more tool for them to use, and that could be kind of fun. So, yeah, I don't mind it. However, it could get a little bit. I don't know. I don't think this will get too out of hand. I'm looking forward to seeing what people do with it, but this is not a problem to me, at least not yet. Chicken games at 1, I don't think this means very much. Like, again, if you took us back like 5 or so years ago, maybe this would be a scary thing to see. But one copy of Chicken Game, I just don't see what you can do with it. The OCG has had this card at 3 for a hot minute now, I think. And it's also in Master Duel, and like people kind of just passively played it a little bit in Master Duel. I don't know. I don't think that Chicken Game's all that bad. It's like one single field spell that's really difficult to search when you have like one terraforming and like a metaverse to kind of get to it with. So I don't think that we'll see any like weird gimmick strategies taking over the top tables. But also maybe you can use it to play your weird gimmick strategy at table whatever 500. I don't have a problem with it. Chicken game's fine to me. Next is anti-spell fragrance. So this is one that I thought sort of like it dodged the big exodus of floodgates that came in December, and I'm glad that they are getting around to hitting it too. So with this at 1 and now like summon limit banned, it basically means like floodgates in Yu-Gi-Oh as a general concept are quite heavily nerfed. No complaints. Like I said, I don't like this card. It's just obnoxious. There are strategies with like Nightmare Griffin and stuff where they would set this. There's like lots of different things. People use anti-spell fragrance to shut down pendulums, shut down, any spell-based deck. Just doesn't seem very cool. Uninteractive cards like this probably are best left on the ban list, so I don't mind it being at 1. Okay, next is semi-limited cards. We got Armageddon Knight. Don't have a problem with this. OCG's had it at 3. Mastral, I think it went to like 2 or 3 recently. It doesn't get like really see a lot of play. It's kind of crazy because this is one of the highest value normal monsters that the game has seen, like historically. But right now, I'm not really sure how much it's gonna do. Now, maybe with this like upcoming malicious hit we're gonna talk about, there's like something happening here, but I don't really think so. The hero deck doesn't need Armageddon Knight to function anymore, and so I just don't see Armageddon Knight really doing a whole bunch. Okay, next is Pirelli Delicious Memory, or Pearly, as I've been informed that it's called. So this card at 2, sure, fine. I mean, like, I don't think that Pearly deserved like a billion different hits, so this going to 2 isn't such a bad thing. You get to enjoy a little bit more of that. I don't know that the deck is going to be like super duper good. I'm not actually sure how much it's played in the TCG. I feel like most people have kind of dropped off the deck after its ban list hits, so maybe this helps it out a little bit, or maybe not. And then finally, some cards that are unlimited. There's Destiny Hero Malicious, a card that if you have played Yu-Gi-Oh for long enough, you'll know this thing goes on and off from 2 to 3, the 2 to 3, the 2 to 3. Some people say this is the reason why the semi-limited section ever even has to exist. People just, I don't know. It's one of these cards where like sometimes it's legal and it feels fine, and then like someone finds a new dark combo pile deck to kind of abuse it with. I think right now the people most excited about this are probably hero players. There's just, one more thing that you can do with an extra malicious, more material to link with, more things to make fusions with, more things to, tribute for plasma. I don't know, whatever the things the hero players do. Right now, I will just be cautiously optimistic and see where this sort of thing goes. It's another toy for heroes to play with and maybe other like dark kind of hybrid decks. Orcus Harport to 3. Um, this is all right. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing. Orcus have been getting more of their cards back, and they don't seem to be making like a huge impact in the game. So this is also kind of that whole 2019 format stuff just coming back. Same with Sky Striker Engage. Interested in the fact that Terratop is at 3. This seems a little bit, I don't want to say scary, but I do remember the time, like 2017, I want to say it was, where this little engine, like, Terratop and Takatomborg were a great starter way of like getting level 3 monsters out and linking off, and you could have this to be like a starter thing in a Phantom Knight deck, a Burning Abyss deck, Unchained, even like there's like theoretically I guess maybe that could do something there. It's like a tour guide card. I don't know. I don't, again, it's one of those things you just got to be like cautiously optimistic. Don't know that it will be like super abusable or not, but it's there. That's what it is. And then the final card is Engage, which is now at 3. So it's actually at 3 in the TCG and the OCG. Okay, yeah, it actually says on the screen. Wow, Paul. Yeah, so it's at 3 in the TCG and the OCG. I think that generally speaking, Sky Strikers are kind of at a point now where like they don't like, I don't want to say they're power crept, but like they kind of need all the help that they can get, and I don't see them like terrorizing the top tables. It feels like Yu-Gi-Oh's kind of moved past Sky Strikers in terms of power level. A lot of decks have high value boss monsters, high value starters and extenders. It's cool because it basically means like if you liked 2019, you got Sky Strikers back, Salamangreats are back, you got Orcus more or less back, Thunder Dragons kind of more or less back. I don't know, it's cool. So that's basically the ban list, and all in all, what do we think about this? Well, I think that Konami really is trying to take a hard look at the things that are annoying a lot of people about modern Yu-Gi-Oh and hit them. So that hit to Barone and that hit to Borlode Savage, these are huge kind of landmark hits in my opinion. Like I said, the generic extra deck huge omni negating boss problem was something that to me was like an issue in Yu-Gi-Oh. I think it made Yu-Gi-Oh feel both unapproachable to newcomers because you made a huge board of omni negates, but also it drained a lot of originality and uniqueness from many strategies, and that's something that I didn't care for. So I'm glad to see these cards go. I know that for a few rogue decks and like stuff, it's not really very pleasant if like you were making these cards, or if you just got your hands on a Baron de Fleur and they just kind of fleeced everybody for money selling rarity collection. Now it's hit. Yeah, that's not great. But I think looking at game health, I'm in favor of those sorts of hits. it doesn't seem like they're being unfair either because they are also hitting, floodgate cards, getting rid of getting rid of summon limit, and also anti-spell fragrance. It means that like just spamming out floodgates, playing like three of all of them, that's not really a viable strat anymore either. Those cards are going to be wildly inconsistent. There's probably a world where they eventually just ban a lot of those floodgates too, just because like being at one means they could sort of feel sacky, so that could happen. Um, my long-term hope for this is that it kind of decreases not so much the power level of the game, but just brings back some like uniqueness and variety to decks. So instead of rushing towards a Borreload Savage and a Barone, just because you're playing like your Monodium, whatever combo pile thing, you are now sort of encouraged to make themed boss monsters and stuff like that. Also, with the floodgates hit, it means that these decks that would abuse those Omni negates also can't like have this, floodgate set behind them. I think it should overall be a net win. But there are some concerns. Like, first of all, Snake Eye did not actually take a direct hit. And I think that this was like a weird thing where at first we were like, okay, they're gonna get a slap on the wrist. And that's kind of what this is like a slap on the wrist. But it's very indirect. Like Link Rebo, a lot of people kind of called that. Didn't call the Barone and Borreload Savage hits, but those are hits to Snake Eye indirectly. And also there is the fact that like a lot of the cards coming back here might allow other decks to potentially try to compete with Snake Eye. How well that will go is anybody's guess. Will a Magispector deck or a deck that's Tekken Kieran somehow be able to shut them down? Will you be able to use Arch Nemesis Protoss in your deck and kind of like shut Snake Eye down like that? Could you perhaps like could Thunder Dragons be good because they can go first and summon Colossus and now like Snake Eyes can't use Wanted and Bonfire and all that stuff, right? Like could Sky Striker try to grind with them? I don't know. So I would like to see what other decks can do with some of the small buffs that have happened on this list and how they maybe compete against Snake Eye before we make any like huge judgment calls. Still though, I think Snake Eye will be like the strongest deck. It just might feel more like it's things are perhaps more competitive. And maybe this bodes well for a deck like what is it, Voiceless Voice and stuff like that that are kind of getting more support soon. Or the 10-pay dragons, maybe this kind of opens up room for them to be a little bit better on release. I don't know. I think that the major Snake Eye hits will probably be coming after the Nationals and like Worlds season. That's probably where we'll get the big hits to that. Maybe like in August, September, or something in that neighborhood. And as for other stuff, I mean, there's nothing else that I really wanted to see hit. I have not been following the TCG quite as closely, so that's where I'm going to kind of rely on you guys to let me know if this was a good or a bad ban list. I'm excited because I have built a Voiceless Voice deck, physical in paper, and I wanted to compete with it some. So I think that this helps that deck seem a little bit more, applicable, more viable. Maybe it can take more than like 6% of the top cut at an event. So that sounds pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We don't know when we'll get the next ban list out. I do want to end this one by just saying that it would really be nice if Konami would tell us when we're going to be getting new ban lists, like a day and date sort of thing. The OCG gets that. And even if they don't want to give patch notes, like explaining, like, here's why we hit this card, even like just some sort of abbreviated, like, just basic reason that they reuse every time could still be decent, right? Like, just hit because too consistent, hit because too powerful, hit because polar. Like, I don't know. Something would be good. I know we're probably not going to get that. That's kind of a pipe dream with Yu-Gi-Oh! If you've played this game long enough, you just know that's how it is. But yeah, I do think Konami has taken a hard look at some of the things that people have complained about for a few years in this game, and they're making some broad, sweeping hits to it, and I like it. Overall, I give this ban list an 8 out of 10 because it would be nice to see it maybe a small hit to Fire King or Snake Eye, like to the deck's core directly. And I'm just a little bit like cautiously, like a little apprehensive about stuff like Protoss being around. But otherwise, pretty good ban list. I think it gets an 8. All right, cool. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this and intermittent reinforcement, and I will see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.